Hi everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week we have Bob Lement coming to our show, and he has produced almost 1,500, that's 1,500 shows. He's guested on more than 25 other shows, and he's been a pioneer of online media. He co-hosts staticradio.com, and he was one of the first 50 podcasts on Adam Curry's original list of podcasts. You guys may know him as the Podfather. That's what I call him. At the beginning of the name he coined. He has also been interviewed by traditional media outlets for many years in the U.S. and abroad about producing media for the internet. And so we're going to talk about life and death and podcasting and all sorts of other fun stuff. Bob, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Yeah, the life and death in podcasting. There you go. That may be a book coming out soon. Who knows?
Seriously. I mean, that's pretty much it. You're born, you do podcasts, and you die, right? That's all there is to do here on Earth.
There you go. It's an arc.
We have 3 standard questions we ask every guest at the top of the show, which is just how old are you, where did you grow up, and what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Oh, boy. Those are all tough questions. I'm guessing you want me to answer truthfully to each one. So I am 56 years old. I grew up in central Illinois, or Illinois, depending on how you want to pronounce it, in your neck of the woods. And they say I'm Generation X. I don't know. I don't really follow a lot of that. So.
Yeah. That's a common answer on this podcast, and it's not a common answer with people I ask in real life. And I'm noticing it as we hit. Yeah, I think you're going to be episode like 148 or something like that, and it's just weird. I'm noticing that people on this podcast tend to say, I don't really pay attention to generations, but like, the media is cramming it into everyone's minds all the time, and they're always trying to, in my opinion, separate us. So but the purpose of the question is actually to just show people how silly it is to typecast anyone by age for any reason. So,
oh yeah, I think that is the odd thing. We're talking just about age and generation and so forth. The odd thing is that I grew up with computers, with the emergence of computers, right? So I was one of the first. My grade was one of the first ones in my area to have computers in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I took to it, right? But most of my peers did not. So even at my age, there's definite divide between the people who are, kind of involved in things that deal with, technology, and people who don't want to have anything to do with technology. And it's a pretty big split, really, oddly enough. My co-host, as a matter of fact, is very non-technical. I'm the technical person, and I help, make everything happen. And then he probably doesn't even have a clue about it. In fact, I know he doesn't have a clue about it. He says he does, but the reality is if he wasn't getting help, it wouldn't happen. So, and he's actually a year or so younger than I am. Mm-hmm. But there's this weird divide, and then you talk about generations and so forth, the same kind of situation. So, I was I would have been the geeky person, right? Mm-hmm. The nerd, the geek who liked this kind of stuff, and not, now it's kind of flipped a little bit. People who have technical savvy are cooler these days than they ever have been. And I have kids, and my kids are, like college age, and one of them not interested in technology, uses it, knows how to use it, doesn't really know how it works. And the other one's a little bit more interested in how it works. And I find that after all these years, I'm like, how could you not want to know how it works? That's always my thing. I'm like, you're surrounded by it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't care how it works. You just want it to work. And then whenever things go wrong, they're like, Dad, fix this.
Yeah. And I have a lot of thoughts about this. One of the thoughts I have is like, the term Luddite, which I run into a lot, is a person who doesn't use and or hates technology. And I find it weird that people associate technology with things that I don't find technological. So the best example I can give you is I am just like you. I'm an early adapter of everything, loved technology as a kid. I used to take apart computers and rebuild them. I wasn't classified as a nerd in that regard by my peers just because I like did it at home and it didn't ever come up in school, and I didn't love like software and computer programming, so I like the hardware side of things more. But then today I really don't like social media. It just doesn't engage me and it doesn't keep me happy, and I get bored on it. So when I tell people I don't like social media, they're like, oh, you don't like technology. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. I have like 2 phones, I have 3 computers, I have all sorts of electronics at my house. I just don't like this like part of the internet. Meanwhile, the internet's the greatest invention of my lifetime. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
As someone who...
It is.
Yeah, I mean, undeniably. And radio was my favorite thing as a kid to listen to. I love TV, don't get me wrong, but I loved listening to radio. I still just love podcasts. I listen to podcasts obsessively, like to the chagrin of my wife. And so I'm curious, Adam Curry, I never listened to him as a host, but every time he's on Joe Rogan, I like jump with joy. I just love hearing interviews with him. So I'm curious, how has he affected your life? Have you ever met him in person? Do you know of him or know him?
I don't know him personally. I obviously know of him. I listened to, so before podcasting became a word, I listened to Curry. He was doing a thing called the Daily Source Code way back when. This would be probably around 2003. And at that time, my partner Miles and I, we'd already been recording our show for 5 years, right? So I guess 4 years. And I was like listening to Curry, and then he started talking about what became podcasting. And so I have in the past, way back then, I emailed him because he was very accessible at that point in time. Totally. Now probably not so much. And so I emailed him, and I'm like, this is really curious what you're doing and what do you do and so forth. And he did email me back during those days. And so then I got more and more interested in it because, much like yourself, I was interested in what at that time was terrestrial radio, is what everybody calls it now. But totally. And loved radio. And Miles and I actually did college radio together. Oh. And that's where the whole show idea came from. Was we went to college together. We did a show in college together, which was not too far off from what we still do. And as all this was kind of happening, I said, do you want to do a show still? And I have a way to do it. And that's what became our show, which was basically a spinoff from college radio, minus the music, because when we started in 1999, Napster was kind of a big thing, and people were getting sued left and right. And grandmas were getting sued, and I didn't want to get sued, and so I said, well, we'll just do what we used to do minus the music. And that's what happened. And as years went on, I encountered Curry and his Daily Source Code stuff, and was able then to get RSS used to be done manually, and so you'd code your RSS, and so I coded RSS, and that's how we kind of got in that position where he used to have a list of a podcast because it was just starting out, and we happened to get on that list. And a story I love to tell about this is, and I don't think most people know this, although I think I have heard him say this in an interview, Adam Curry, is that iTunes predominantly was Adam Curry's list when it was launched.
Wow.
So we were on iTunes at the beginning. I've been off iTunes and back on iTunes a couple of times since then, but we were on it at the very beginning. I got an email from a person who was listening, who I think still listens to this day, but and he goes, you're on iTunes. And I said, I didn't know we were on iTunes. We were on the podcasting area of iTunes. And sure enough, I went and looked at it, and I would say other than the PBS stuff, most everything else that was on there was on Adam Curry's list.
Wow.
Which was really interesting. So they kind of wholesale hijacked his RSS feed of all these things that he had been gathering, and then put it onto iTunes, which was kind of fun. And it's a good story. Nowadays.
Yeah. And what a kind of, I'd love to talk about podcasting for a little bit before we get into the metaphysical stuff. So I'll continue on this, this avenue, if you don't mind. And, so I love podcasting, but I'm not a big fan of social media. I'm not asking you to agree with me, but I am curious, do you see a difference between the two? Does podcasting remind you more of terrestrial radio or more of social media? Like, where do you kind of see it?
I, for me at least, I'm in your bandwagon. So I really like social media initially, and was very involved. And I think that social media has devolved itself from what it was supposed to be at the beginning. And so, really, it's just a tool at this point. The way I look at it, it's a tool to put things out because people are scattered, right? And so there is no one avenue to reach everyone anymore. And in order to reach the larger groups of people, you have to be on social media. So it's gone from being something that I thought was really kind of a democratization of ideas into being basically a way that you can reach people en masse that you have to do almost. It's a chore now. It used to be kind of fun, but it's a chore now. Now, as far as podcasting goes, again, this was I think it still is because you're not talking about the numbers that you have in social media. So people who are doing podcasts, who are doing them with any regularity and so forth, is not in the millions, right? It's still in the hundreds of thousands. And I've heard numbers from 100,000 regularly produced shows to 300,000. And it's hard to know, where it's at in there because a lot of people don't do anything with any regularity. So they'll be like, today I'm going to do a podcast, and then 10 shows later, it's nothing. So so as far as regularly produced kind of things, I think that we haven't gotten to the level of social media. So therefore, it still has that kind of underground feel to it a little bit. Way back when there was like a real underground feel to it, but now it still has a little bit of that cachet. Even though we're kind of been, yourself and myself and so forth, we're not like known quantities, in the world beyond what we're doing more than likely. You know what I mean? So you didn't have a TV show, or you're not a traveling comic who goes all over the place and then does a show as well. And I think those are really to me, those are always the better end of that, because it really gives a voice to the every person. So you have an interest, you're following that interest, and it comes through in what you're producing, as opposed to being, something that's overly commercial, or, just basically another way for you to promote something else that you're doing. This is what you're doing, and this is what you want to do. And so I think that we're still in that phase. So hopefully it's still, something that's fairly underground and has its roots kind of as a grassroots situation. And I don't begrudge the celebrities who are doing it yet, or totally, maybe I should say totally. But it seems like most of those ventures are ventures of marketing, as opposed to ventures of something that they're really, really interested in. Or maybe it's just an outlet for them. I would say, and I haven't listened to a lot of them, but Dana Carvey and David Spade do a thing called Fly on the Wall. And, I'm sure it's very, obviously they're two celebrities, but they're not two celebrities who are at the height of their fame. They're two celebrities kind of at the other end of their fame. And so I think for them, it's a way to still do some things and tell some stories and talk to people and still be interesting in a way, whereas I think some folks are, like, I don't even know what you'd call it, but there's been a bunch of advertising. I don't want to necessarily be part of that, but for a thing called AMP, which is Amazon's version of radio on the internet.
I didn't know about that.
I don't know if you saw any of that. That's purely a marketing / commercial kind of thing. And I'm not so much interested in that, So
yeah. So, I mean, what do you think in the larger picture? Because now I'm going to kind of segue this into like spirituality and all that. You normally ask my guests, how were you raised? What were you raised and all that? But let's keep it on this side of it, and then I'll move that way if it seems like we should. But
Sure.
do you think, given like culture and just like how things are going, do you think like this underground movement, the fact that like, I have a voice and I have a much more limited audience than like Mark Maron, but I still have an audience I would not have had in the pre-terrestrial radio era, and likewise, with your following, however large or small you consider it to be. But my point being, do you think that this is like helping culture, or do you think instead we're all actually like getting isolated into our little echo chambers?
Well, that's a good question, because I think if you look at social media as the example, a lot of people, they think that they're reaching a larger space, but really it becomes a smaller circle. For ideology and so forth. So far, I think for podcasting, it's not quite like that. I think it still is a larger thing, because it's easier to produce things now than it ever has been, but it's still not so easy that everybody can do it. Whereas anybody can type in, to Twitter or whatever one you want to use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you. They can type in or forward, a meme, right? To actually produce something takes a little bit more wherewithal, a little bit more to do. Some of the things that you and I have been going back and forth, we're trying to nail down times, you're trying to get all this gathered together, which, logistics, I don't know if anybody else has to deal with logistics in their everyday life. It's tough to be, it's tough to do logistics of any kind, because there's so many variables that you're dealing with. And so that, I think, makes it a little bit better than just your average, hey, did you see Grumpy Cat? I'm going to send you the latest Grumpy Cat. And, I don't want to sound mean to people who do that, because they do enjoy it, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of drive to do something like that as it is to, people do that in line. They're waiting for their coffee, and they're like, I'm passing off all these memes and everything. My mother, who's over 80 years old, sends me junk that I don't want all the time. And so it's not like it takes a great deal of creativity to do stuff like that.
Yeah, so first of all, great answer, and thank you. That was awesome. And I'm glad you actually brought your mother in, because I did want to make an age-related comment in a positive way, which is I just turned 42, and I'm middle-aged, but I don't consider this the middle of my life, because optimistically speaking, with healthcare and everything the way it is, we all have a life expectancy now that should be approaching over 100 if you were born like after a certain date, and you're in that group, and so am I. Meanwhile, your kids and my kids, their number is probably much higher. So just to be clear to people listening,
right.
But yeah,
Oh no, I think that's changed over time. Whenever I was, young and my parents were in their 40s, they were ancient.
Yeah.
And now, that's really not the case anymore. Especially if you, as long as you don't stick your head in the sand or something. I think we're also lucky that smoking and drinking and so forth is not in vogue as much, and it probably has really helped us live longer.
Yeah,
because we're not sitting here smoking 100 cigarettes a day or something. So.
I was just talking to a friend about that. How well, first of all, it's strange to see marijuana become legal in my lifetime, because I grew up in the Bay Area, so it was like never legal there, but it was like wink, wink legal. Right. And so I remember like moving around the country and having people like, "You do drugs?" And I'm like, "Well, no, but I understand what like your DARE program told you." But I'm not trying to talk about marijuana so much as the replacement of alcohol with marijuana has been mind-blowing to me. Have you seen that where you live?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no. And to be honest with you, I'm older than you, and marijuana has never been non-existent. It's always been illegal, and it's always been there. It's just the legalization of it really is just a money grab for me, for my opinion, a money grab for the states, because it's always been there, and it's just now, hey, great, now you're paying another quarter, and that goes into your state coffers.
Yep.
But it's weird because at my time growing up, everybody when I was little was smoking, right? I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
And as I got older and so forth, then that started becoming out of vogue, and so it wasn't always cool to smoke. And then they started enacting all these laws and so forth, and so now smoking is kind of at a low. Vaping is higher and everything now, but that has risen over probably the last 10 years or so. But it's just amazing how younger people look at the same age because they haven't subjected themselves to these things for decades in their life. So I know I wasn't on topic for what you wanted, but I do find it really amazing.
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest things is that Seinfeld episode. If you want to go back to Seinfeld, but Seinfeld episode with Kramer playing cards and he's smoking constantly, and he's like, he comes out and he's like, your face looks like an old catcher's mitt, Don't look at me.
Yeah,
I'm hideous.
It is. It's strange, and this is connected to where I wanted to go, which is to ask you about the life and death question that we always ask everyone, because you mentioned that like culture is kind of like shifting, and it does. It appears like we're getting healthier, but I don't feel like we're getting healthier in a spiritual way. I feel like we're getting healthier in a typical materialistic, superficial way. And
sure.
So whether or not that's good or bad as a net positive is not what I'm really getting towards so much as where do you like fit into this culture? Are you and this is where Gen X would come into play. They claim that Gen X is like the children of the boomers and the greatest generation who like shun everything and kind of get sarcastic and shut down, and so you're considered to be an unspiritual, unreligious generation compared to the ones before you. So are you spiritual yourself, and how do you feel about spirituality?
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to MikeyOp.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MikeyOpp.com. Thanks.
That's it. That's a good question, and I would say yes. I probably exemplify a bit of the sarcastic nature of the Gen X that people say is out there. But I don't know. That's always a tough question. My answer is I would hope that there's something, but I'm not planning that there necessarily is something. Upon death, I would hope that there is, and I want that to be true. But I don't think that I've seen enough myself to say, definitively that that's the case. So I think I'm more spiritual in the sense of, if this could even be called spiritual, maybe that's not the definition you're looking for, but it's just trying to be a good person and be fair to people and honest with people and trying to be, golden rule, treat people how you want to be treated. I think that's kind of where I lie on a lot of that stuff, as opposed to, always looking at a higher, a higher being or something like that. It's just to live a fairly good life and try to make sure that I'm being a good person to everybody else, and then that will kind of be good for me, right? So it's a karma kind of situation more than anything.
Totally.
And then at the end, if there is something, maybe that good karma will get me somewhere, and if there's not, then there's not. So I think that's probably more the case. I have had a history with my parents, of being forced to go to church, and I didn't appreciate that too much. Even though I did go until I got to be of an age where they weren't going to, push it anymore, and then I didn't go. And for the most part, I haven't gone to like any kind of organized religion. I kind of have a cynical view on organized religion as a whole, but I don't hold that against them. I'll put it that way. I think that again gets down to people, because everything is made up of individuals, and some individuals kind of have more play in systems than others. And so, you get into those areas and it's like, I think I more kind of judge the people that I'm dealing with more than I judge the systems as a whole.
That's a great quote. Like, I love that. And kind of backpedaling just a little bit into your personal philosophy, which I loved, by the way. Do you, let me preface this with, everyone has a natural fear of death. Like it's normal to not like walk up to a ledge and just start jumping up and down and stuff like that. But then there's like a
Sure.
fear of death in a metaphysical way. And that's what this podcast is designed to help people cope with and or eliminate if possible. But really just the first part, that I think people should be mindful. What was the Roman saying? Like, memento mori, like remember that you're going to die, like live your life with that in mind in a positive way.
Right.
So are you at all fearful of death? Does that change as you get older? Or are you just like I said, with the preface of course you're afraid of a normal kind of like early death, but.
Yeah, I typically, I mean, you just never know. That's always the situation. So, speaking to death, I pretty much, when I was younger, like say in my early 20s or whatever, I assumed I wouldn't make it past 30. And there was no reason behind that. I wasn't like, a criminal on the run, or a high stakes gambler or drug dealer or something. There didn't seem to be anything for me past that point, as I thought, right? So I was just like, oh, well, I can't imagine that, this is going to go on much longer. It sounds like a really dismal take on things, but honestly, that was my thought, because, I come from a Rust Belt kind of town, and everything, actually I was just there to visit my mother. I'll tell you, I'm from Decatur, Illinois, if you've ever even heard of it.
Yeah, I have actually.
Okay. So the big thing in Decatur right now is Archer Daniels Midland, which, if you've seen any marketing information, they're called the supermarket to the world, right? So that sounds fantastic, but the realities are that Decatur, Illinois, when I was growing up, had over 110,000 people. There were several manufacturing things, and people, it was a very, people were making money, even if you had a really low-end job. And now there's less than 60,000 people, and all that's gone. The only thing that's left really is Archer Daniels. And so it's really, the only thing that's left now is kind of the dregs, right? That's what they call it, a rust belt, because everything's just sitting there rotten. And so I was there during the decline. So as it was going down, and I'm like, I'm going to be here, and it's going to be terrible, and so forth. But that didn't work out that way, thank goodness. So I was able to do other things, and now I don't know. So now I have a bit of a different outlook on all of it. If it's going to be an accident or something, it's just going to happen, and you're not even going to realize it till it's too late. And so now I just worry about the being sending myself to an early grave because of the stupid things that I'm doing myself, right? So that's always my concern, as opposed to just driving around and getting in a traffic accident or what have you. But now I don't know. I mean, I'm just like, well, I don't know. I had my grandmother live to be 93, so go figure.
Yeah, it's funny. Most people who have people in their family who live longer think they're going to live longer. So it's really interesting to hear you say you thought you would die young. I hear that occasionally, not often, but it is always interesting to me, because I always thought, like, I wish I had that thought, because I would be at like a party and like people would be willing to do something I wasn't willing to do, and I'd be like, nah, I just think when I'm 50 I'm not gonna be happy or proud of myself if I did that. And like, it has come true. Like, I was not wrong. And whenever I hear about a celebrity or someone who did something dumb in their 20s and it comes up later, I'm like, you know what, there was some little bug in my head that it wasn't about being a celebrity, but just like that understood this like thing about how you get older and you want to be proud of yourself. So Bob, it's been wonderful to interview. I've loved like talking to you. I love hearing your mind. People definitely know from the notes and from what I read where to find you and all that. But I do ask my guests to give one kind of message to the world before they leave. So what would you like to tell my audience?
Oh God! Well, if you can hang in there, it gets better. So after I got out of my 20s, things picked up, and I'd say I'm probably been the happiest that I've ever been in my life. In my later part of life, what do you want to call it? The second semester. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, I mean, it even if you kind of grow up depressed or what have you, you can always, everything can change. Hang in there.
Wow. I absolutely love that. That was the most quotable quote of the interview, which had a lot of quotes, and I keep track as I interview because it helps me in many ways, so I'm always writing down good quotes for the guests. So that was awesome, and that's really optimistic, and I think that people really can use that. And I actually feel the same way. I'm actually in a second marriage, and I have one child from this marriage and another on the way, and I love my son from my other marriage, but I did not love my other marriage, and so I can tell people, hang in there, it gets better is like the best advice in the world. I love this second semester of my life, or whatever you call it. So
I was trying to think of trimesters and quarters. So I was thinking trimesters, so second semester.
Yeah. Whatever it is, I do agree that not everyone burns brightly in their youth and loves it, and that's the best period of their life. And I definitely have never looked in the rearview mirror with regret or with envy. So thank you again, Bob, for coming on the show. Thank you to everyone who listens to the show at home. The best way to support the show is to head over to mikeyop.com. That's mikeyop.com. I will send you one email a week. It will be philosophical, it will be humorous, it will have artwork in it, it will have a podcast advertisement, but it will not be spam, it will not come more often. So please sign up and help the cause, and to everyone who loves Coffin Talk, continue to support us and let people know about it. That's how we grow. My name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.
You are the moon.